Welcome, everybody, to a Good Story Podcast, Episode 2. Today, we're going to be talking about thieves and bandits from history. But before we get into that, as a side note, I realized last week I did not explain the format of our podcast, and some listeners were confused. So basically, it's this. All three of us get together, and we agree on the topic. It can be a person, place, or thing. Does not matter. Once we agree on that topic, let's say, for example, famous warriors or soldiers from history, we then all study around that topic and then present the day of the podcast. So the other two podcasters do not know what the other picked. So we're basically just surprised and learning just as much as you guys at the same time. So that's pretty cool. So that is the format of our podcast. We all take turns, and a lot of times we do get sidetracked and just probably 50% of the time crack jokes, but that's just a Good Story podcast. So now back to the topic at hand. Bandits and thieves. Today we're going to be covering a man who hijacked a plane with a bomb. Was it a real bomb? Fake bomb? We don't know. And he parachuted out, and to this day has not been caught. He's infamous for his hijacking. Did he survive? Did he die? Who knows? You'll have to listen and find out. The second person we covered, well, it's a little bit of cheating, but it's the Japanese and the Chinese Robin Hoods from their history. Turns out humans are not very original with our stories. And both China and Japan also have a Robin Hood. Imagine that. And lastly, we cover two cowboys, two bandits, who were given chances to go free multiple times, but were just way too addicted to robbing banks and finally met their end in South America. So, without further ado, let's start the show.
Okay. I can go first if you want.
Go, okay, Joe, cool. Go.
All right. Well, hello to you too, guys. Damn.
Damn, I get out of the shower right and you guys want to talk history. What's going on here?
All right. So, we chose thieves from history. Now, mine's interesting because technically this guy, we don't even know if this is his real name. And they don't even know. They never caught him, so we don't know what his real name is.
Zora? I'm kidding.
What'd you say? No. So this is the story of D.B Cooper, who in 1971 got away with an act of what they referred to as airspace piracy. So basically, in 1971, this average man in his 40s, white man, average height, nothing too unassuming about him, boards a plane. And he's only boarding a plane that's supposed to be a 30-minute trip up to Seattle. And he gets on the plane. He orders a drink. And then when the flight attendant comes to talk to him and ask him to pay his bill or whatever, he passes her a note. And her name is Florence, by the way. Florence. I can't remember her last name, but I know her name is Florence.
Very forgettable and expendable person, but continue.
Yeah, exactly. So she's thinking, this older lonely businessman's just giving me his number. So she puts the napkin with the note on it in her purse and starts to walk away. And he goes,
I like how you used to be able to do that. Just like, hey, here's my number. Oh, this old guy's just hitting on me. I'll check it out.
Yeah, just a regular creepy old man. Nothing weird.
Yeah, nothing to be crazy
just like
about.
Every other man his age in this timeline. Drunk, smoking cigarettes all day.
Yes.
Then he calls her back and is like, no, ma'am, you might want to look at that. I have a bomb. So she reads the note. He tells her to sit down next to me. So she does. And so she very quietly asks if she can see the bomb. And so he picks up his briefcase and opens it up. And she sees 8 red cylinders, 4 stacked on top of each other, connected to what looks like a timer. It looks like a bomb. It looks like a bomb. For all she knows, he has a real bomb.
How do we know this wasn't an elaborate way to pick her up? They just got out of control.
Exactly.
It just got out of control. It was like, he's making a joke, and then it got out of control. You don't know that.
You never know. That's true. I didn't think about it that way. But anyway, he he takes so Florence goes and tells the pilot. The pilot and there's only 30 people on this flight. It's a small, like, quick commute flight. Anyway, they tell the passengers that they're experiencing like a small maintenance issue. And so for 2 hours, they kind of circle over Seattle while the authority or the FBI or whatever gets his ransom money together, because he asked them for $200,000, which today would be, they added, I think it said around 1.2 million, something like that. And he asked for he asked for $200,000, 4 parachutes, and them to refuel the plane when they landed. So they land. He lets all of the passengers go except for the pilot and like 2 or 3 of the crew. Anyway, so they get off. He gets up, and he's up there. He's being real polite the whole time. Like, and reportedly, he even offered to request that the FBI bring the flight attendants and everybody food or like meals while they were on there. But they didn't. Anyway, very polite, very straightforward. He went up to the cockpit and talked to the pilot and the co-pilot, saying, all right, when we take off, he's like, I need you to fly at the slowest possible speed without stalling the plane. You need to fly at, like, I think below 1,000 altitude, stuff like that, and fly to like towards Mexico City. And so the pilot and them are talking like, well, we can only really make it to Nevada. And he's like, okay, well, we'll refuel in Nevada, then go on to Mexico. Well, when they take off, he tells all of them to go into the cabin, into the the cockpit. And then at like 8:13 p.m., they hear him open like the open the hatch in the back. And then when they land in Nevada so they can refuel, he's not on the plane anymore. He has, at some point in between there, he jumped. Like, he jumped out of the plane with the parachute. And they have this is an ongoing case. It's been over 40 years, 49 years, something like that. They officially closed it in 2016, or like, it's no longer an active case. They closed the active case in 2016. But they never caught him. Like, for all we know, he could have died. You know, he may have died in the jump, or
I'm saying he's dead. 1,000 feet at night, and he's probably an inexperienced guy just doing this, trying to earn some cash. Like, he's probably dead. Like, it's obviously not well planned out. Like, think of it. Like, apparently, if you would have known the size of the plane, he would have known you can't make it all the way to Mexico City, or else he would have hijacked the plane in like Dallas or something like that. Like
true. But he did know, he did plan out somewhat. He asked for 4 parachutes, knowing that, and he asked for non-military, so they had to be civilian. He asked for 4, knowing that if he asked for that many, then there's the possibility that he's going to make some of the flight attendants or somebody jump with him, so they wouldn't sabotage them.
Roll the dice.
Yes.
That's what I said.
Yeah, well, so they wouldn't sabotage the equipment.
Give him 4 fake parachutes. Roll the dice. You don't know if he's going to knock the people out.
No, that's true. They knew that. They have found like some of the money. Like, there was a small cache found somewhere, but they haven't found all of it. And they never found his body. They never found any of his remains. The only reason we have a name D.B. Cooper is the plane. He bought the plane ticket under the name Dan Cooper. And the first suspect they brought in was somebody named D.B. Cooper, but they quickly ruled him out, but the newspaper ran with that name, and so now everyone calls him D.B. Cooper. But yeah, it's one of the most famous like hijackings in history that we don't know who this guy was and how he got away with it, or if he even got away with it, or if he's lived or died or what.
He's probably in the middle of bumfuck nowhere, some national park, dead, and like his corpse, like no one will ever find it. Like, there's like millions of acres. Like, there's no way. Like, this is the equivalent of that guy who hijacked a plane last year, do like barrel rolls. Like, it's
but it's just interesting that he was, and like everyone described him as being very polite. Like, he wasn't nervous. Like, he knew what he was doing. He was very polite. Like I said, he even offered to get the flight attendants like food and stuff like that. He paid his drink tab. Like, he ordered another drink and he paid it. Like, he paid his tab, which is weird. But yeah, no, that's D.B. Cooper. Interesting
guy. He probably lived. I'll tell you why. Because no one is that calm in that situation unless everything's going according to plan.
Oh yeah.
And when he said Mexico City, my first instinct was that it wasn't a mistake. That he knew there wouldn't be enough fuel. That he was doing was he was trying to basically, if they reported him, like I don't know if they had communication. I assume they did to like the FBI on the ground.
They'd say, "Hey, just cut the cord." You don't know. Like I think he's just a sociopath who just like made a couple bad plans and is like, "Okay, looks like I'm jumping in the middle of some wilderness."
Yeah, but then they would think he's in Mexico City. Yeah, but then they would think he was in Mexico City, and then then they would go there,
and he has to jump out of an airplane with a parachute. Where's he gonna go? Like he has to know where he is in the air to drop somewhere close enough. Like, you think Seattle to Nevada, there's a bunch of empty land between there. Like, he has to know, like, I'm close enough to a city to jump, so I'm not starved to death in the fucking wilderness.
Well, they did say that he kind of knew, like, the area. Like, when they're flying over Seattle, like, he was able to look out and, like, pinpoint landmarks. He's like,
okay, probably from Seattle, but, like...
Oh, yeah, like, the air, yeah.
In that long stretch, there's fucking nothing. Like, there's only maybe a few cities. Like, he would have to know what city is near, jump out, and, like, walk it, because... If he gets out too far away or doesn't know where he is, he's starving to death. Like
okay, but if he died, wouldn't they at least find the parachute?
You would think, but like
millions of
Joe, you said they found cash though, right?
They found like a small some of the money. Like they found like a small cache of
like in the woods or something, right?
Yeah, it was like in like a
okay.
Small, like,
well, then
why did they? In the middle of fucking nowhere, so he's dead.
Yeah,
I don't think he's dead. He's alive, Jared.
We'll never know. Probably.
It just seems too like everything went according to plan for.
Yeah, like he pulled this off. Like
here, we all put him in the cabin. I asked to refuel. Obviously, he knew he wanted to go. He tells them Mexico City. They think he's going to Mexico City, but then he tells them I'll go to the cabin. Then he jumps out. I don't know. And after he asked for the parachute, so this obviously was his plan to jump out.
Why didn't he bring a parachute on with him in the first place then?
How would he sneak on a parachute?
How would he sneak on a bomb?
They're huge! A bomb is nothing! You can
a backpack! You can have a backpack!
Was it even a real bomb, Joe?
We don't know. I mean, honestly, they don't know.
Oh, he brought it with him?
Yeah, I guess so. Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
I was gonna say, like, I thought they were gonna say it's just a fake bomb, and he was just gonna be like, yeah, by the way, guys, this was a fake. He just left it behind and he was just gonna jump. No, it's easy to sneak on like a small thing that looks like a bomb.
You can put a parachute in a carry-on bag.
Skydive. Those things are huge,
Jared. You can put it in a carry-on.
Like, let me have this parachute.
You can put it in a carry-on bag. Just stuff it in there. They didn't check your bags back then.
No, I mean this is before 9/11, so yeah, he got away with it pretty quick. And it's crazy to me that 30 years ago you could just get away with it. You could bring a bomb onto the plane. Like they didn't really check.
The good old days.
Yeah. I don't know. It is an interesting story. I think personally, he may have lived there. I mean, there are some theories that he was former like special forces and stuff like that because he kind of knew what he was like. He kind of acted like he knew what he was doing. So there's, it's possible that he lived, but I mean, it's more likely he probably died because when they said he jumped, they said he jumped in an area that was like in the middle of a storm or something like that. So he
he fucking starved to death. There's no way.
Probably,
I didn't realize
by lightning or something. I don't know.
He hit a tree on the way down and died, or he fucking starved to death in the wilderness.
If the wind is that bad, then fucking you get thrown off really far. As someone who has skydived. No, they do. If the weather's bad, like you get fucking. I didn't realize there was a storm, so yeah, he's probably dead then. Because if you can jump at night. It's just if you're good enough at doing it.
He didn't have an altimeter or anything, so he didn't know how high he was. Like he fucking died.
Yeah. And it's not like this. Like this is a Boeing 727 or something like that. It's not a plane that's designed to jump out of. Like it's.
He's like, you have to have it at this like height, and he's like, so as slow as you can to not stall out. But man, you gotta be going pretty freaking slow to jump out of a plane. So.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's like they were going like I want to say I know this is like a boat terminology, but like 100 knots, something like that. That's what it said.
That's a lot of knots right there.
I'm not sure.
That's more knots.
That has to do with like how fast you're going, plus how fast the wind is, like all that stuff. Like it factors into it.
All of us amateur skydivers here giving everybody advice on how
I don't
to do
know.
it.
I thought it was fascinating. I hope he lived. Because there's part of me that hopes he survived and is living somewhere and got away with it. But like
until the storm part, I was definitely on the whole like I think he probably lived because it just sounds like everything was planned out, and I have a hard time believing he didn't plan out like, oh, I can walk 50 miles this way I'll like plan it out beforehand. You don't know how long you plan this. Like, I'll leave a bunch of food and stuff. I'll maybe even leave a car and if by this landmark. And so I know if I head towards this landmark, but if he jumped out in a storm, it's like, that's going to throw you off a lot. So I don't know how he would be able to find that.
But the other thing is too, it's like he had to negotiate with the pilot and the co-pilot, and they agreed, like all three of them agreed, like on Nevada. So it doesn't sound like.
Oh, Joe, that's an important piece of information you left out there.
I said that.
I don't listen to you, Joe. I'm sorry.
Maybe you just take Mexico and down, you cut halfway, you say, okay, it's an airport in Nevada. Maybe the FBI.
I don't think going to Nevada was part of the plan originally.
Okay, well then never mind. Then never mind. He's dead.
Yeah, he's probably
dead. Hey, no, it's like where more of the money would have popped up. They found a cache of it, but it could have just been like it fell out of the bag on his way down. Like,
yeah.
Yeah. All right, DB, you're probably dead. If you're not dead, that's cool, but you're probably
if you're not dead, Bender will trade you feet pics for the real story.
Yeah, that's right.
It's certain. When do you come forward? It's been 40 years. He was in his 40. He'd be 80 by now. I'd come forward, be like, "Yeah, I lived." Or like,
I'd probably just write a book.
Limitation on hijacking a plane.
Yeah.
I write a book and then hire a lawyer where like Mark Twain did, where you don't release it till after you're dead.
Mm-hmm.
So that's
that'd be cool. Yeah,
because he could still be charged, right? So I'd be like, nah, I'm good with the jail.
Yeah, no, it's still.
I'll go next. My outlaw bandit guy thief was I threw a little curveball. I have two.
Oh, okay.
And there is a reason I have two. The reason I have two is, as I mentioned to you guys over text, my first guy I didn't realize so little information about him. I was like, well, this can't be very compelling. It's going to be very short if I just pick this guy. So then I looked up another guy who I knew, and turns out he also had very little information about him historically. And it's mostly just a legend, it's like a folk tale.
A double
and
feature.
I was like, well, I'll just merge them together and just have two. So the first one, this was not my original one. Oh, I can start with my original one. My original one was Jung, if I'm saying that right, hopefully. Or Jung.
Juhan.
Juhan. And he had based on historical, there's very little information about him, but basically he was a bandit leader, an outlaw leader. And there was a lot of warring going on at the time. This is the 12th century. And he basically was probably just a bandit. And then he had an uprising. And he was just attacking people. And they would send soldiers and he'd beat them. And the Song Dynasty would send soldiers and he'd beat them. So he was kind of an intimidating figure. And one history sort of recording actually said, like, why not offer him amnesty to go fight? And then tell him all will be forgiven if you go fight this other, rebellion or something. So, which actually would have been probably pretty smart. But so the only recording is this recording from the Song. It's considered like one of the most official histories of the Song dynasty. And he gets very little mention in it, but it is mentioned again that he wins some battles and stuff. And they have so much loot. They go and steal 10 huge ships just to load up I don't know where they were planning on going or what, like it doesn't say, right? So it kind of leaves so much up to like so many questions. This guy, they just all put their loot on these 10 ships. I don't know, just to store it, I guess, because they were just in the mountains and like in the marshy areas. And so they're off the coast, and this one guy just gets commander or whatever. So he gets like 1,000 daredevil soldiers, like really tough soldiers. And he takes like these weaker guys, like they look more, like not a strong force. And they send them to harass the outlaws on their ships. And these idiots, they lure them into the city because they're like, they're so easy to beat. Let's go kill them or whatever. And then all those people are waiting and they kill all of them pretty much and kidnap him. And he's like, you guys got me. And but they actually sent he hid people by the sea. So when they pass him, all the bandits and outlaws, they send out these guys and they just burn down the ships. And when they find out their 10 ships are burned, all their loot is gone and their ships that they captured are gone, they just go like, well, it was fun while it lasted. We give up. So that's what it says in this history that once they found out their ships were burned, they were just like, and then they surrendered. They were like, they lost all hope and surrendered, which I'm like, what?
They're going to be killed if they surrender. Like, what do they mean?
Like I said, it's like a little paragraph. So it's like you're trying to like fill in all these holes that you're like, wait, what? How does that make sense? But whatever.
I mean, they lost their gold.
They lost all their loot. They're like, well, they're looking out at the sea like, damn, we fell for that trick. All right, I guess our bandit days are over. I guess
once your reason to fight is gone, why fight?
Yeah. What's for your life or something? They apparently were just like, you know what? Even though we're like rebels and traitors and we killed all these people, like all these army people or whatever, soldiers. All right, we're done. We're good. You guys win. But what happens is the main guy, he gets turned into Robin Hood. Who Robin Hood, the original story of Robin Hood is he actually was like sort of a sociopath too. And
pretty fucked up if you heard the real story.
Yeah, it's actually really fucked up, actually. He actually was probably pretty evil, but basically I mean, the original story, but he gets turned
subjective. I'm just gonna continue.
Disney the Fox Robin Hood movie. So basically the same thing happens with Song Jiang, is that he becomes a folk hero because people get oppressed over time, and over time the story just keeps getting retold, where somehow he gets turned into a bandit and outlaws that steal from the rich and give to the poor. And he has 108 bandits, and he gets put into what's considered the 4 great novels of Chinese literature, of ancient literature.
I don't know government approved ones, but yes.
yes. Well, that's an interesting fact, actually, is that he gets it's called Water Margin when it's translated to English, but it also can be like the Outlaws of the Marsh, or All Men Are Brothers was another name. And basically it talks about how there's 108 bandits with him. They steal there's corrupt officials, of course, and they're abusing the peasants. And so he comes along and they steal and give to the poor so they're not oppressed. Well, obviously, when that book comes out, the actual real life officials don't care for that too much, because that's, kind of encouraging rebellion and murdering them and taking all their stuff. So what they do is, apparently in the book, obviously I haven't read it, but they have to make it really weirdly convoluted, where they have to make the outlaws bad guys, but also good guys. It's really weird. Like, they're demons that were sealed away by a Taoist sage, and then they get unleashed by this guy who knocks over where they were sealed, like this rock monument. So then they're reincarnated as these outlaws, but they're sent by this deity to, even though they're supposed to be demons, they're sent there to fight the corrupt, the corruption and evil that has spread, demonic evil that has spread throughout the land, and the leader's demonic or something. So they had to make it really weirdly. The story apparently is very convoluted because they had to change it so the officials wouldn't get mad and say hey, burn these books, or I don't know, don't tell these stories or whatever. So yeah, and they were called the Hao Han, which literally means hero or good guy. And there was 3 females who were apparently bandits, so they're very progressive in the story. I don't know if that's actually
progressive.
real.
The Chinese censors would love it. On a side note, we too will censor our podcast for the Chinese censors if requested.
Yeah, on a side note, as we always say, we will shill for you, Xi Jinping. We would gladly censor for your great majesty. So anyway, that's basically is that they went out or whatever, and so he basically just got turned into a folk hero. The real guy got turned into a folk hero. I don't think there was any women in the original guy. I think he probably just were hey, let's steal a bunch of stuff, and then they won a couple of fights.
Probably stole some women.
Probably stole some women. Stole some gold, stole some women, loaded them all up on ships, and then they got them all burned. And they're like, shucks. It was fun while it lasted. So the next guy, there's a little bit more historical precedent, probably because it was in the 16th century, but it's Ishikawa Gomen. And so basically, it's the same thing. There's no real proof that he was in a historical reference. He's literally just called a thief. And yet somehow over time he becomes like Robin Hood, and he not only steals, but he gives it all to the poor and the corrupt officials, and there's warlords everywhere, and he fights the warlords, and he takes from the merchants and the clerics who are abusing the people, and he gives it to them. I'm seeing some patterns around the world with humans.
Yeah,
they're
we
being
tell
suppressed.
5 stories. We have like 5 stories that we
yeah. Basically, anyway, that's it. So so basically, again, he's a folk hero. So in the original story, because no one knows his actual history. There's so many different versions. One is that his father gets killed and maybe his mother too. So he goes to learn like ninjutsu, Iga ninjutsu, so to be a ninja. But then he bangs out one of his master's mistresses. Not even his wife, just one of his mistresses. He bangs her out.
Gotta assert his dominance somehow, Bender.
Yeah, and so I don't know. His master must have pissed him off or something, and so he bangs her out, and the guy doesn't care for that, so he's mad at him, and then so he runs away.
More. Anyway, continue.
Yeah, so I don't know. Like, I was thinking, like, why would you admit that? Because then your wife would know, but maybe his wife didn't care that he had mistresses. I don't know.
Back then, yeah, it didn't.
So he steals a sword, apparently, like a really precious sword, and runs away. But this might just be a legend, right? No one actually knows because there's different versions of everything. So then, basically the story is that he ends up getting after going about his robbing and outlaw days, he finally tries to assassinate a warlord named Toyotomi Hideyoshi, and he tries to kill him. But in the original, there's different versions for this fucking story as well. God damn it! But he knocks over a bell apparently when he's in his room, and that alerts the guards, so they come in. So he's about to kill him, and he knocks over a bell. And the other ones is like there was a mystical incense that alerted them of his presence or something. I like the bell one better, so I just
think
chose
that's
that
more
one.
realistic.
Yeah, I think the mystical incense sensed his presence. So the reason he was trying to kill the warlord is apparently he killed his wife and kidnapped his son. So then he is sentenced to die with his son to be boiled alive. And there's also different versions of this one as well. And in the one that I like the most popular one, probably because it's the most heroic, he holds his son up while he's being for like forever, like for a very long time, and he dies, but his son is like forgiven because they're like, oh, that was so crazy that we forgive you. Which, funny enough, as soon as I read this story, I said, holy shit, this just happened recently in One Piece. And I was like, this is where Oda got it from.
Oh my god.
he holds up in One Piece, he holds up his like his samurai. He's being boiled with the guy in the story. It's a flashback, and he's holding them up, and he's boiled alive, but he saves them. And in One Piece, he pushes them out and he says, run. But yeah, that's where Oda got it from. I was like, aha, history inspiring my favorite manga. So that was awesome.
No spoiler alert, Bender. Shame on you.
Any anime or manga fans in the audience?
Yeah. Give us a like.
I don't know Bender's full name. Email.
God damn it, that's right. Fucking cut these parts out. Cut our names out, please, for the love of God, Jared.
I will. No worries.
So basically, so then you want to hear the other story? Well, the other main story was he originally holds his son up, and then he's like, oh, I can't hold him up anymore. I guess I should just give him a quick death. So he's holding him up, and then he just shoves him down to the bottom of the pot where it's the hottest.
And tries to stand on him just so he can prolong his own life?
To kill him. That would be hilarious. He's like, oh, I'll save you, son. And he's like, never mind, this is really hot. So he basically kills his son and then holds up his son's dead body until he also dies. So it's sort of like a symbol of like, look what you did, which is not as fun as, him holding up his son and saving his life. So
no, I like that version better.
You like that version better? Everybody dies. Joe is the warlord. Yeah, so now they call an iron like shaped bathtub if it's like a kettle. It's actually called a Gomen bath, which they actually do have in Japan. Obviously, probably not in modern day that much, but probably if you go to a bathhouse, maybe they have them. So it's named after him. So if you get boiled alive, everybody, you can probably have a bathtub named after you as well.
Good.
But
Or if like Bender, you poking
think
around
about
enough
that the next
bathhouses,
time I
you'll
go to
find
those,
your own spot.
Cannibal Islands.
you both talked at the same time. I have no idea what either of you said.
Jared, you go.
It's better that way.
It's better that way.
All I said was I'll remember the boiling alive thing next time I go to those islands where all the cannibals live.
What?
You know, there's islands. I can't remember where they're at, but there's like islands that we can't go to because.
Oh, in the Indian Ocean.
Yeah.
Why
Cannibals
you
will
bring
literally
that
kill
up?
you.
So the next time I go there, I'll remember.
Yeah, I was like, why would you go there? Where was the connection there, Joe?
It was a joke.
It was a joke.
My joke
must
has
have
something to do with
it
Bender
went over
attack.
my head because I was like, why is Joe talking about cannibal?
Oh boy, that's the only people I can think of that would actually still boil you alive.
Yeah.
I
we got
feel like
10
they wouldn't
minutes.
cook you. I feel like they just eat you raw, like maybe a little fire or something. But
They'd probably cook you. I mean,
yeah, with a fire, like a little fire. But I feel like they wouldn't go through the trouble. Of
Do they
bathing
have
you.
to? Like, I don't think you have to cook people.
Yeah, I don't think they're gonna do a whole pot. Like, all right, they're making us into a stew.
somebody who knows.
You're thinking
tell us
of
in the
witches,
comments.
Joe. Those are what witches do. Put you in the stew.
For
And
all you
Is there
cannibals,
something
in
you're
the
not telling us, Joe?
Joe.
For all you cannibals in the comments, give us your best recipe. Anyway,
Yeah, there you go.
it's Jared's turn.
The one thing is, like, they're actually starting to think that maybe he was 3 different people merged into one. So, like, one guy was just a thief, one guy was like an outlaw bandit who maybe did steal from the rich, and the other guy was probably a samurai who actually did try to kill that warlord.
I mean, of course, you're still rich. There's people who have money. Like, you can't steal from the poor. They don't have very much money.
Exactly. So, well, rich people steal from the poor. I don't know, but they steal their crops or shit. Their daughters or something. But so yeah, no, they think, probably realistically, historians are like, maybe it's just like 3 people smushed into one, and that's how. Because it's his story makes no sense. He's just like a thief, but he's also like a ninja, and then he's like trying to kill this warlord for some reason. It's like.
Wants to be Hokage.
Yeah, exactly. Like, believe it. He's like, I'm gonna do everything, guys. Believe it. Summoning jutsu. Anyway, so that's my 2 guys.
Anyway, my thieves are Robert Parker and Harry Barr.
Oh, okay.
Joe probably knows who they are.
I've heard the names.
Well, anyway, Robert Parker grew up with a wealthy family in Utah because his granddad was a Mormon. Following the Brigham Young train to Utah, he died on the way there. His dad became a very wealthy landowner, and Robert Parker ended up working on his ranch. They had a ranch hand named Mike Cassidy who taught him how to ride and taught him how to shoot guns, and so looked up to him as a father figure. Then fast forward a few years, he took some odd jobs as a ranch hand here and there. Even though he had a wealthy father, he kind of did his own thing. Then ended up working as a butcher. Let's go figure in Rock Springs, Wyoming. He kind of ended up there, and so after he was a butcher for a bit, they used to call him Butch. And then for his last name, he took the name Cassidy off after his boyhood hero, Mike Cassidy. So story about Butch Cassidy. And if you haven't guessed yet, Harry Barr is the Sundance Kid. So
okay. I do know who these people are. That
I was gonna say Butch Cassidy. I know. I didn't know their real names, but anyway.
Honestly, me neither. I watched the movie when I was a kid, and so that was my whole frame of reference. Which the movie is actually decently similar. They skip around a lot, but the movie's decently similar to what really happened. But anyway, worked as a butcher for a while. But in 1880, he got drunk one night and broke into a shop and stole a pair of blue jeans and a pie and left an IOU. Like, hey, I owe you the money for these blue jeans and this pie next day, which the shopkeeper was not happy. So Butch Cassidy got arrested, obviously, but the jury acquitted him. So I guess they really believed he's going to pay it back. So if the jeans don't fit, you must acquit.
It couldn't have been me, Your Honor. They don't fit.
But from there, he kind of continued his life of crime because he honestly got away with it. So he's like, I'll just keep going. But he robbed his first bank kind of at the end of 1880 and at the age of 23 in Telluride, Colorado. So him and some friends had rustled some cattle and like bought a racehorse. And so like they were making a little bit of money, but they were kind of unhappy with how much money they're making. So besides cattle rustling, they decided to rob a bank. And so that's kind of when he got introduced to Sundance, and they both like they both like friends do this like horse racing deal. But what they did is they went into the town, spend a lot of money. So they kind of like would come off as like not desperate men. And so they what they did after that is they literally walk into the bank, no masks or anything, hand a check to the teller and say, "We want to cash this check." The teller looks closely at the check. They grab his head, slam it into the into the desk, and they steal something like, I think it was like 20 grand back then. And back then, money.
No, that's a lot.
they made quite a bit of money, and they ended up hiding in southeastern Utah. And then so they went from Wyoming to Utah, and they had this one spot they actually ended up using later as a hideout. So his first robbery is important because they established kind of like their base. And after this robbery, like obviously 20 grand back then, tons of money. And so what Butch Cassidy does is he actually like buys a ranch up in Wyoming in 1894. And he began a relationship with a wealthy cattle rancher's daughter named Ann Bassett. And so he like pretty much lived in the up and up for 4 years, didn't steal, didn't rob. Like all of his neighbors were like, oh, he's a super charismatic, hardworking guy. Like they didn't think anything different of him because they had no idea, obviously. But the ranch owner was like, something's off. Like he didn't like him, and so that kind of like soured the relationship a little bit. But he was eventually arrested for horse thieving. So he stole a horse, convicted, and he served 2 years in prison for it. But what happened after that was he was like a model prisoner, and he like wrote to the Wyoming governor like, hey, like I won't do it again. Please let me go. And he's like, please like give me an early release. And the Wyoming governor's like, fine, as long as you don't do it again, I'll give you an early release. Because like that's all they had him on. They had no idea of the bank robbery. They just had him on horse stealing. So they thought, oh, okay, like model prisoner is probably fine. So lets him go, and then he immediately began rejoining his gang, robbing banks again immediately. Yeah. So the robbery started in January, went to like August, and they robbed a bank. But the funny thing was like they had like this rule where they would never rob anything in Utah for like a while because like that was where their hideout was, and so like okay, as long as they didn't like rob a bank in Utah, we'll be okay. But they ended up breaking their own rule in 1897 because, yeah, go figure. One of the guys knew that there was a coal mining town in Utah that it was like it wasn't super wealthy, but they brought in the pay for all the miners on like the same day, and it was random to try to like deter thieves, and they usually had like a guarded like railroad car. So they figured out was we're not going to rob the railroad car, and what we're going to do is we're going to like stay in town and look for work, which meant like we're going to pretend we want like ranching jobs, but we know there's not a lot of them, so we're going to act like we're coming there for work and just kind of do odd jobs until like a ranching job pops up. So to do that, they watch the railroad, they get ready, and then one day they hear the whistle blow and they know, okay, it's payday. So then from there, they literally just like the gang walks up to the guy carrying, I think it was, let's see, how much gold was it? Oh, it was $7,000 in gold, and it was thousands of dollars in silver. And so they literally robbed the guy. Like he's like they like broad daylight walk up to him, pull out a gun, and say like, "Hey, if you want to live, give us what you got on." He's like, "Come on around." Like, well, shit. But so what they ended up doing is like it's kind of a botched robbery. Because a lot of people saw, and a lot of people like were obviously like wanted to keep him from stealing their pay. So what ended up happening was they dropped all the silver and just stole the gold, like just the gold. And they cut the railroad lines out of town to make it kind of like a little bit easier to escape. And they hid again in southeast Utah, which even though they stole from the bank in Utah, they still hid in southeast Utah. And he actually they still hid there. But what happened was since they cut the telephone lines, one of the trains out of town like was gonna like go as fast as they could to the next town to spread news of the robbery because it's just like this blatant robbery in Utah. So essentially what happened was like the next town like decided like, okay, well, it's gonna take a while for us to get like a posse together. And so like, well, we're not gonna be able to like get this. So they essentially escaped like scot-free after this giant, just blatant robbery in Utah. But now people know that they're like in Utah too. Like they already have like crimes committed here, so it's a little bit more serious now. So when they decide to rob a bank in Butte County, Colorado, like that was like the really big botched one. So they did is they like their whole posse went into town, and this is a smaller like poorer town. They robbed a bank, but the mistake was they didn't realize like how much the townspeople were like, I don't want to say prepared, but they noticed that like there was something suspicious going on like early on, and then all the townspeople went for their guns, like all of them. And so what happened was,
I love the Wild West, and they all went to go for guns.
They all went for their guns. But what happened was is like, okay, so there's this bank, and then all the time people start going for their guns, and then Butch Cassidy kind of realizes, well, we're kind of screwed here. And so him and Kid Curry and the Sundance and a couple other people, I don't remember their names. I think it was 5 guys together. But they essentially flee, and 2 guys were captured. The rest escaped, and they only got away with $97, which there was thousands of dollars in the bank, but they only got away with $97 and didn't have time to get it all like together. So that was kind of a botch because a couple of guys got captured. But another big one was their most famous robbery actually happened later, and this is the one that got them in real trouble because just how like I don't know, it's just over the top. So on June 2nd, 1899. What they did is like there was a super rainy day on the railroad tracks, and they flagged down a train like with some like red lanterns. And so the railroad conductor thought, okay, there may be like a landslide wash away the tracks. So they stop and they board the train and they try to steal the whole train. And so the conductor like leaves, and then like the engineer like drives for them. So the conductor runs down the track to try to fly down to the train to like help someone's robbed our whole train. So what they do is they have him steer across this bridge onto this like dead end track and stop, and they blow up the bridge.
Oh, shit.
Just trap the whole train there so no one can come get them because there's no bridge to get over there. And there's one car on the railroad because they did the research beforehand, obviously, and they knew there was like a strong box car. And there's a guy inside guarding it. So what they did back then is they had this strong box cars, like they're super hard to get into, and a guy would be on the inside and only unlock it when you get from point A to point B. So there's no lock to pick or anything. So the guy refused to open it, and they're like, "Well, we really don't need you. You can open it or not." So they put a bunch of dynamite on the outside and blew up the door. So they get in there, and the guy is obviously a little bit shooken up because he couldn't, because he just had some dynamite explode right next to him, but he's alive. And so they're like, okay, well, what's this combination of the safe? And he was so dazed from the dynamite, they're like, okay, well, we obviously don't need you again. So they blew up the door on the safe. Yeah. And they stole over $50,000 in paper money, gold, jewelry, all of it. Like they stole a bunch of money. And this was like just a crazy robbery. It was they stole a whole train, they blew up the tracks, they blew up a door, they blew up a safe. Like they obviously like this garnered like national attention. Like they're already kind of famous at this point, but this is like put them on the map. Like so much so that their real downfall kind of started. And if you've watched the movie, you'll remember this scene specifically because it's I don't remember which one it is, but the movie I watched, this is the opening scene. That like they did this, stole from the train, and the next part of the movie is not quite as accurate, but this part's pretty well depicted. The next thing that happens is obviously people are kind of upset that they're having like quite a bit of money stolen. So they hired the Pinkerton detective agency to track them down. So obviously they're pretty damn good at their job. And so like in 1899, they had a pretty good inkling where he was. And so what he did was he went to his ranch, like in Du Bois, Wyoming, where he was like kind of hiding per se. Like so, like they searched all over Utah and Colorado for him, but he went back up to Wyoming, and he tried to hide again. So like he became like an honest worker again. Like all of his friends were like, "Oh yeah, like great guy. We haven't seen you in a while after that horse thieving thing, but So he pretty much hit there just as like a normal guy, just working day to day. But he kind of got to the point where he's like, I want to like make it like official where I can hide and not have to worry about things. And so what he did is he went to a lawyer in Colorado and said, "Hey, do you think you could get the governor of Wyoming to cut me an amnesty deal?" And the lawyer is like, "Absolutely not. Go back and hide. Like you've stolen so much money, like from so many people. There's no way." But he goes to a second lawyer, and the second lawyer is like, "I mean, I'll try." So then he goes to the governor of Wyoming. The governor of Wyoming is like, "If you promise not to do it again, I'm willing to make a deal with you. As long as you don't have any warrants out for murder and it's just this, I'll grant you an amnesty deal. As long as you all agree to stop." And so he's like, "Oh, great deal." That was happening the first meeting. The second meeting, the governor's office actually found a warrant for murder, and Butch Cassidy like vehemently denied. Like he's like, "I never killed a single person like in my whole life," and there's not really a lot of proof that he did. But the governor said that just the accusation is enough because like if it looks bad on me for pardoning a murderer, it's not as bad like pardoning like a famous thief that's agreed not to do it again. I don't know. So that was kind of the deal. And the governor,
you were gonna say, and then he went to live his normal everyday life in Wyoming, and they stole another fucking horse.
Nope, the deal was off.
I thought for sure he was gonna start stealing horses again.
I know.
Yeah, but anyway, like after this, like obviously the Pinkertons are after them, national attention. Governor of Wyoming said absolutely not. Like there's a little bit more heat on this, and so he's like, well, if I can't get away with it clean, they would decide to go to another string of robberies. So him and Sundance went on a bunch more robberies. And then the heat kept getting closer and closer. So Pinkertons were like on their tracks. And so they decided, well, we're going to flee to South America. That's what we'll do. So they go down to Texas, and him and it was Butch Cassidy, Sundance Kid Curry, and two other gang members were there. And they had like a famous picture after like partying for like I think it was like a month or something like that. They pretty much like blew a bunch of money partying in some town in Texas. And then the next thing that happened was like they decided like, well, we probably like the best way to get to South America isn't directly like riding down because there's not a lot of train traffic all the way down there. So they decided to go to New York. And so Butch Cassidy told Sundance, "Hey, meet me in New York." And like, so they eventually met in New York. And so what ended up happening is Butch Cassidy, Sundance, and Sundance's girlfriend at a place. I don't know, at something. They decided to go to Argentina. So they get on a boat, go to Argentina, and it's fine for a little bit. Butch puts $12,000 in a local bank to deposit so he can buy some land. They end up buying like 17,000 acres, which is generally pretty dang good for cattle ranching. So they bought 17,000 acres, but the thing is, they kind of stuck out in Argentina. They wore their guns everywhere they went. They're kind of known as like the wealthy gringos, like just kind of like obviously like back in the day in Argentina, these guys come out with all this money. They wear guns everywhere. Like they stick out like a sore thumb. Like people know that they're there. They don't know who they are at this point, but they know they're there.
Yeah.
But them thinking they could flee to Argentina and that the law wouldn't follow them, they were sadly mistaken because the Pinkertons, like, they were hired by some other people, and they eventually found them. I don't know how they did it, but they like talked to the government of Argentina and said like, "Hey, these people are here. Do y'all know where they are?" And they said, quite frankly, yeah, they're right here. Like they haven't broken any laws or anything, but they're right here. And that was kind of how it was for 5 years. They lived there for 5 years without doing anything wrong. Then, and on the fifth year, they decided to start robbing banks again.
Of course.
And Mercedes.
These guys are like addicts. They're not even like they're like fucking. They can't help it. Even when they get away,
the thrill. It's not about the money.
Yeah, exactly.
Got away several times at this point.
Yeah.
Like, dude, you could have gone away scot-free so many times, lived your life after it, and you're just like, nope, one more bank robberies. Let's go.
All that money can make into one more bank. They made 20 grand in Mercedes.
Oh my god.
Mercedes, Argentina, they made 20 grand. But
yeah, and then what happened, Jared?
And then the Pinkertons found them, so they had to flee to Bolivia.
Yeah. And what'd they do in Bolivia, Jared?
Well, so they got a hotel room in Bolivia. Well, they had a bunch of money. You're like, oh, great start, right? Like, gonna have a new life in Bolivia. Argentina didn't work out. Wyoming didn't work out. Utah didn't work out. Bolivia's our place. But of course, someone tipped off the Bolivian military, and they surrounded their hotel room. Now they've been used to dealing with like inept local law enforcement, and civilians and just like evading the Pinkertons. But the military is a little bit more serious because they completely surrounded them. And there's like, this is like kind of where it gets kind of like to like a not well known area because no, like to this point, there's documentation on like there's pictures, there's news stories, there's everything. To this point, people aren't really sure how this went down. Like the most famous story is that they surrounded them. Sundance saw they were surrounded, and he ran out with his pistol, started firing wildly, grabbed a rifle, and tried to run back inside. Got shot, and then Butch ran out and grabbed him and got shot also. But he's able to pull Sundance back inside of the hotel room, and then just a rain of bullets from like all sides, like because they're surrounded by like 100 soldiers. Like they're surrounded on all sides. So they throw in a rain of bullets, and then they go inside and they find Butch Cassidy and Sundance both dead. And Butch, well, actually, I'll start with Sundance. Sundance had a few shots like in his arm and his chest, and one in the middle of his head. And then Butch had a few shots in his arm and one in his temple. So what I think happened is Sundance was like dying, like really in a lot of pain, and like Butch put him out of his misery and then killed himself. But they're not sure about that because they shot so much into the building. That's kind of what they think happened. And then they're buried in some unmarked graves in Bolivia. A couple of the most famous outlaws ever buried in unmarked graves. But again, like no one really knows what happened because it's kind of like the Alamo. Like the survivors who were there, like don't really exist. Like it's just like a bunch of assumptions. But who knows?
If only they would have stopped fucking stealing.
So my takeaway from this is how the fuck easy it was to rob banks back then. Like, if you could get away and like away from the scene of the crime, yeah, you were pretty good.
Yeah, they didn't wear a mask in their first robbery.
Yeah,
I am more shocked of how good people were at. We talked about with D.B Cooper that there's all this land that he could have landed in that was uninhabited and no cities around. Well, think about them back then in the old Wild West. Like there was towns and stuff, but how you must be really good at tracking people to follow them all across, not just the United States, but into freaking South America.
Well, what happened was like, okay, so like when they were in Texas, all five of them, the gang members took a picture together, and the Pinkerton used that picture as their wanted posters. And so I think they were able to like track them. Like, okay, this person was seen in
track
New
them
York.
to Texas. That's what I'm saying. Is like they just all this land would not have been settled back then. It wouldn't have been like today, right? So then you have all this empty land, small towns.
Like the Pinkertons were like if you needed somebody found, that's who you went to. Like they were good. They were really good.
How though? How did they do it?
I don't know. I'm not expert on their tactics, but you'd have.
I mean that's pretty impressive.
That might be a good story. Just
fucking Argentina.
Yeah, it would be too. Another good story, just law enforcement in general, because like. A really good story is the one, the two Texas Rangers that caught Bonnie and Clyde.
Oh yeah, they just gunned them down.
Well, they couldn't catch them, and so they finally were like, "All right, we'll get two old retired Texas Rangers on their trail," and they found them and murdered the fuck out of them.
Oh, that'd be a fun like topic, like the like law enforcement. Like I might pick the original Texas Ranger, like Walker, and is like he's the reason that the cult exists. Like Samuel Colt had a failed patent on his original revolver, and it was Walker, the original Texas Ranger, who had a contract for the Colt Dragoons, the original like Colts that were produced, and they were so popular that other people started picking them up.
Yep, fighting the Comanches.
Yep,
he died, I think, in West Texas, in maybe a gunfight even. Huh.
So yeah, well, that's what good show. Podcast, whatever word you want to use, guys.
It's a good story.
Good story.
It's a good story. Again, yeah, those are three thieves from history. Did D.B Cooper survive? Tell us that.
It was more like five, but yeah.
Joe, you don't get to do the outros. I do the outros.
Oh, okay, you do the outros.
Hey, if you want to do the intros, it took me forever to do this one today, so.
Whew, that was the end of episode 2, everybody. Hopefully you guys learned something, and hopefully you enjoyed it. If you did enjoy it, we do have a previous episode covering famous warriors and soldiers from history, so be sure to check that out. And give us a like. It takes about 3 seconds, which is that amount of time. It could have already been done. Listen, it's free, it doesn't hurt you, and it really helps us out. And if you don't like the video later on, you change your mind, you can always go back and take away your like, whoosh. But for now, just give it to us. That's okay. If you have any suggestions, if you have any questions or comments, put it in the comments section, of course. We always love to hear feedback. And if you're listening on Spotify, well, I don't know, just share it or something. I don't know what you guys do on Spotify. Do they not have a comment section anymore? That's why Joe Rogan's podcast is suffering. Anyway, be sure to check in for episode 3 where we cover famous musicians and there's a spicy surprise involved. Until next time, guys.